Starting from the early age of about 9 or 10 years old, I was taught that Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492. I'm sure that you can all remember that little rhyme that we sang growing up to help us remember the origin of our nation. Well, that isn't at all accurate, and the fact that we have an entire day dedicated to the man who stole credit for discovering America is frankly absurd. As a child, I didn't think much of it. I believed whatever my teachers told me. But growing up, I came to realize that I had been fed lies and told fairy tale-like stories about this man known as Columbus, when that was not at all the picture he painted whatsoever. Starting with the truth about Columbus. Even though Columbus is frequently praised for his alleged discovery of the Americas, we must face the disturbing reality of the crimes carried out while he was in command. The indigenous people that Columbus encountered suffered severe and long-lasting effects as a result of the cruelty, exploitation, and enslavement he unleashed upon these new lands. According to the Gilder-Lehrman Institute of American History, Columbus landed on an island of the Bahamas called San Salvador first. He wrote a letter to King Ferdinand of Spain, who was Columbus's sponsor for the quest to discover new routes to China, India, and Japan, stating, and I quote, "I discovered many islands, thickly peopled, of which I took possession without resistance, in the name of our most illustrious monarch, by public proclamation and with unfurled banners." He made it seem so innocent and brave sounding. The truth is, though, this man was not brave nor innocent, and the poor people who had been living upon these lands forever had no idea of the mass genocide that was coming for them. As Columbus approached the islanders, it was reported that he and his men were met with food as a peace offering. Columbus kept a journal. That is a big source of the information that we have on the tragedy that he brought upon indigenous people. On the day that he approached the islanders, on October 12, 1492, according to the Washington Post, he recorded in his journal, "We understood that they had asked us if we had come from heaven." That End quote. This is proving that these innocent people just wanted peace and they were welcoming him and his men onto their island. Following his statement in his journal, he wrote, "With 50 men, they can all be subjugated and made to do what is required of them," referring to his men that he was traveling with. This is just the beginning of the horrors brought upon by Christopher Columbus. Columbus and his crew stayed long enough to kidnap a few civilians of San Salvador before sailing away to explore other islands filled with indigenous people. His next stop was Hispaniola. This place, Hispaniola, is now known as Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Their people were known as the Taino. Here, Columbus took hostages, built a fort, and left a few dozen members of his crew in Hispaniola to search for gold. He returned to Spain with no hostages left because they had all passed away due to the harsh weather and unlivable conditions on the ship. The next year, he returned back to Hispaniola to find all of his men that he had left there had been killed, after they roamed the island in search of gold but found none, and ended up taking women and children as slaves for sex and labor. So the Tainos killed them. After Columbus realized that all his men had been killed and there was no gold to be found, he took 500 men, women, and children to take back to Spain to be sold as slaves. 200 of those men, women, and children died on the journey. He later returned and required all people aged 14 and older to deliver a certain amount of gold back to him and his men within a certain time frame, or else their hands would be cut off. I mean, can you imagine living your lives like normal, and then one day this man comes into your home and begins killing and torturing your loved ones and people that live in your community? Because I cannot. Many of the Tainos ended up committing suicide with poison they found from plants called cassava, which is a natural form of cyanide. By 1540, there was a total of 200 Taino left alive, and Columbus and his followers were responsible for the deaths of up to 15 million indigenous people. It's absolutely unthinkable, the things that this man did, and yet we still dedicate and honor his name once a year, and people get off work and school for it. Why should we change the name of Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day? Well, some states have changed Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day already, but not nearly enough. These states consist of California, Delaware, New Mexico, Maine, Vermont, and DC, according to Pew Research. That makes up about 6 out of 50 states in our nation that have realized that we are celebrating the wrong person. The holiday honoring Columbus needs to be renamed. Through this action, we can shift our focus away from the Eurocentric viewpoint and recognize the rich diversity and histories and cultures that form the tapestry of the Americas. A more inclusive holiday that honors the perseverance and accomplishments of Indigenous peoples can be a significant step in acknowledging this country's complex past. In conclusion, reconsidering the celebration of Columbus Day is not an attempt to erase history, but rather an effort to confront it honestly and inclusively. By acknowledging that Christopher Columbus was not the first to discover America and considering a more representative alternative, we could promote a greater understanding of the diverse cultures that have shaped the Americas as we know them today. Let's celebrate a day that represents the ideals of our national holiday and pays tribute to the Indigenous peoples who have lived in this country for millennia. Thank you. Have a great day.